everyone's always searching for that goal, that end thing. And it's like, until I get there, once I get there, I will be happy, right? Or this will unlock for me. But there's not an end goal. There's not that end journey. It's a whole bunch of nows and heres. It's the here and right now. It's a whole bunch of that.
Yeah.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the smartest guys in the room. It's your boy O.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're super excited about today's episode. A lot of firsts. Number one, our boy Just isn't here, so it's the first time he's marked absent. Just,
we miss you, bro.
we miss you. Number two, first time we have a power couple on the show. So want to give a big shout out to the Austin family that came all the way through from Brooklyn
and out. Yo, we're really doing our thing with the boroughs.
We are covering all the boroughs. We've hit Queens, we've hit Manhattan, obviously. But super excited to have this conversation with Angela and Joe Austin, co-founders, co-owners of the one and only Milk and Pull, with multiple locations in Brooklyn and hopefully coming to a borough near you sometime soon. Is that true? Yes, it is. So we're super excited to have a conversation with them today, talk about their journey into in entrepreneurship, how they got there. And I'm gonna just keep talking like they're not sitting right next to us. So lots of big firsts. But as Jeff kind of mentioned before, it's a little ugly outside right now. It's a little ugly outside, and I thought it was gonna rain, but apparently there's fires in Canada, and that's why it's nublado.
I'm sorry we made y'all come out. The smog levels are like fucking.
Smog levels are high.
Joe was making fun of me because I put a mask on, but gotta be safe.
You had a mask?
You do.
I had, when I got out, when I was walking in the street, I had to put a mask on, bro.
Wow,
it was like,
I would have made fun of you too.
Yeah, it's pretty cloudy outside down
COVID's
here.
COVID's over. It's all good.
COVID's over.
Let's a quick round of applause for our guests, the Austin family.
Yeah. Thank you so
Angela,
much for coming.
Joe, thank you for coming. And Jeff, where do we want to start this conversation? There's a lot to unpack in this one.
I think, well, first of all, Angela, you're from Medellin, Colombia, and Queens, right?
So yeah, I was born here in Queens, and I lived part of my childhood in Medellin in Colombia, and then I would just straddle back between Colombia and Queens throughout my life.
I was gonna ask, because I thought you were born in Medellin, I assume, and I apologize.
I went to live there when I was 1.5.
I was gonna ask you, how does it feel from moving from one place to the exact same place? Because Queens and Colombia
Queens is basically,
Same. I mean, and I lived in Jackson Heights. That's where I actually came.
God. Even more.
When I came from Colombia, we lived in Jackson Heights for a bit, and then we moved to Astoria.
Yeah.
So that was actually really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like not Little Columbia, Big Columbia.
Yeah, Astoria, right?
Just Queens, period.
Queens.
Just Queens.
Yeah.
I think it used to be more so than now.
Yeah.
I think now it's like super. I mean, even growing up, it's like super diverse. There was never like.
Queens has always had that title though of being like the most diverse borough for sure. And every type of cuisine you can find in Queens.
Everything. Best Thai, best Indian.
Look at me, Bronx, doing some propaganda for the Queens, bro.
Not for nothing. I've always been like that too. I've controversial.
I've considered them the neutral borough. Like, there's no beef with Queens. Like, nobody dislikes Queens.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest, and this is wildly controversial coming from somebody who's from Manhattan and from the Bronx. I've always felt like Queens was, if not top 2 boroughs.
Yeah.
Top 2 out of the 5.
Gotta say.
Well, Queens was the suburbs, right? So for people that came from the Bronx, you aspired to move to Queens. Like when you got a little bit of change, your family would move to Queens.
See, but
you get your own staircase.
But time out. That's not necessarily true. It's
mostly 100% true.
It's mostly true.
I'll tell you why. If you're from the Bronx or Manhattan, and you aspire to do something a little
You going
bit
to Jersey?
different. Nah, you either moving to
up to
Jersey or you moving
Westchester?
to Westchester.
Nah.
Queens and Brooklyn.
Depending on what year
you
you're talking
move
about,
to
I
Long
think.
Island.
It depends. It depends. Are you a millennial or are you
Depending
a
on the year.
Gen Xer?
That's a fact. That's a fact. Rules have changed. You're right, though. You're right.
Rules and median house prices have
Yeah.
changed as well.
Exactly.
All right, but that actually takes us to Joe.
Yeah.
Joe hails from our home borough of the Bronx. Shout
All
out
day,
to the BX.
you know.
Joe, how did you find your way into Queens? And how did
No,
you?
we-
Well, I
he
never
lived
moved
in
to Queens.
Oh no, it's Brooklyn.
Oh, Brooklyn. Excuse me.
it's-
Wow.
No, it's just Angela's from
Yeah.
Queens. Yeah.
First of all, how did y'all even meet? Like Bronx, Queens,
In
ended up in
Manhattan.
Brooklyn.
In a retail job.
in the central space.
Okay, so let's start there. Yeah, how did this connection happen, and when did it happen?
It was my freshman year of college, and I got a job at H&M on 51st and 5th Avenue, and I met him there. And when I quit, I gave him my 2 weeks because I was like, I got to study for finals. I don't have time to study for finals with this schedule.
Joe was your manager?
No.
Oh, okay.
I gave in my 2 weeks.
I was there part time
Yeah.
as well. So what I was doing, I was modeling at the time, and I was using the retail work as a supplement, and then she was working at the same time.
And I gave him my number when I quit. I was like, if he doesn't call me, then it doesn't matter
It
because
doesn't
I'm never
matter
going to
because
see
you're
him
dipping
again.
anyway. I feel that.
So I don't have to be
Foolproof.
embarrassed. And he called.
I was about to say, Joe was like,
How did I called? I called the next day.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah, thank you. Yes, he called
Joe's
the
like,
next
"I'm
day.
Shit. He's like, let me see if this shit really worked, bro.
All right, so how long have you guys been together now?
19 years.
19 years.
Amazing.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Two beautiful children. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Carter.
Thank you. Oh, they're going to be happy
They're gonna be
about
so
this.
happy about that.
Hey, come on, those are the homies. And wait, so two beautiful children, 19 years. How many homes at this point?
I mean, we bought and
We
sold
bought and sold quite a few.
quite a few. And it was all thanks to my mom, actually.
Wow.
When he told her he wanted to propose, and she was like, how much money do you have for a ring? Because you should use that for a down payment.
Instead of getting a big fancy
Mhm.
ring.
See, that would have
See,
scared
that's
me
that savvy.
shitless. You
That's
know?
that savvy.
It would have scared
Mommy
me.
sabe.
That's
I
a
think,
lot of pressure.
but I also think it was like my mom's like Colombian mother nature, where she was like, if
If
I
it goes
tell
south,
them, if I tell them to buy something, it's gonna take them a while. So she ain't gonna leave my house for a while.
And how long did it
Really?
actually
Little
take?
did
You
she
think she was
know
playing
that
the
I'm
long
Not,
game
not like
like
that
that?
at all. It was like
Oh, my mom
we got
plays a
on
long
computer.
game.
It was like research, and it was like
I'm
we went
obsessed.
looking in Jersey because I was living in Jersey at the time, and then we started to explore Queens. We
And
were like,
then
this ain't it.
Brooklyn.
But we were partying in Brooklyn at the time. We were in Bushwick, and we were like, we think Bushwick is it.
Yeah.
and not
What year was that?
2009, 2010.
Amazing.
So that's literally while things were starting to like.
Well, prices had just gone
Yeah,
down.
it
We
was
were
right
in the
after
middle
the
of a
crash.
recession.
The crash.
We were in the middle
So
of a
prices
recession.
started to come down. So it was like perfect time, and it was like, oh my God, we can snatch this up and be in like a cool neighborhood right
Yeah.
off the L train, and
Yeah.
that was the first property.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. The
yeah.
timing.
That was like the start of it all. So thanks to my mom, I think a lot of this is possible. Just her, whether it was like her fear or like trying to control me not leaving the house.
it somehow ended up working out for the better.
Yeah.
See, we always, I feel like, are a little like apprehensive depending on how your parents are, right? So it sounds like your mom is a little like presentada. Like she was like,
She's Colombian.
yeah. She was like, nah, this is what's happening.
"Wait a
this is what I
minute."
need. This is, all of that. So
Or it could have gone bad.
it could have gone bad. Yeah.
It could have been like, nah, this is too much. Like she putting in too much pressure. I'm out of here. It could have gone either way.
But you took it. You took it. You were like,
We took
you
it.
stepped
We took
up.
it. We took it. We took it.
Look at that.
And I'm-
It's
Yeah.
not a, that's
I got the research skills.
So tell us a little bit about this business endeavor before it was even
Before it was
we
milk
know
and coal,
today.
like how did it start?
Oh,
like
man.
what was the idea or what was the end goal when you first started? Like did you know that you wanted it to be coffee or did you
We always knew we wanted it to be coffee.
You did.
And it actually started when we were dating.
Okay.
We hadn't even gotten engaged yet. We hadn't even talked about, we're going to get married. We're going to get engaged. We'll have, like, none of that. It was just like, how dope would it be to own a business?
Nice.
And we both, I mean, obviously, like he worked in service also. Being both from New York, it's like, yo, I want to have a place in my city.
Yeah.
And we both love coffee, love going out, and love being in spaces that we like feel comfortable in, and wanted to create our own space. And so we just started like going everywhere around the city, like going to all the coffee shops and researching, started writing a business plan. This was even before I even moved out of my house, before we got engaged, before we bought anything, like we had that business plan. And then full circle, like after we moved to Bushwick, in the building that we moved into, everyone was starting their own business.
Oh, wow.
So it was almost like this community of creatives and entrepreneurs came together to this one place, and we all found each other. And through like their stories, and he like reconnected with a friend from his modeling days that opened up like a store right down the block from us. Yeah.
Nice.
And from that, just being part of that, it was almost like, oh wow, like we're in our space, and it even like fueled us to be like, okay, like this we could do this here. And at the time, he was in banking, and he was working with a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses. And one of his clients, he, in getting to know them, because part of his job was like relationship management, in getting to know them, he would also share his story. And one of his clients said to him, like, well, if you want this business, like, what's the worst that can happen? And he was like, you lose your money. So what? You're young, you have a job, she has a job, like, you'll make it back up. And that was like the unlock for us, where it's like, oh shit, we can do this ourselves. Yeah. Because at first we were thinking like, oh, we have to have funding and people, and I come from an advertising digital background, and all of the businesses that I was around from that perspective were all like startups and places that were looking for companies to invest in them. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I saw. It's like, oh, this is a path you have to take. And then the moment he just like brought that home, I was like, oh,
it all clicked.
We got a 401k we can pull from, we got savings we can pull from, and that's what we did.
I think that's so interesting because, and I think that wasn't like, it wasn't like anything that was new under the sun when you were told like, yo, you can, like, you're young, like there's time to kind of start all over again. I think what I find like the most inspiring about you two is the fact that, the community that we come from, like we operate a lot on fear, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and there's a lot
built
security,
on fear.
Right? We talk about security all the time. Mm-hmm. And like, that's a big leap to take, and like a big bet to take on yourself, especially, right? So I think my question for you, Angela, is more, you mentioned that you come from a background where there's a lot of businesses, adjacent to you, and did that kind of help you take that leap, like, or feel more confident when you took that leap?
100%. I mean, all I heard growing up, my great-grandfather had pharmacies in the small towns that my family was from in Colombia. And my grandfather had a farm, which is why my great-grandfather married my grandmother to my grandfather. It's because he could take care of her. Yeah. He had farms. And
did he have to pay a dowry?
Jesus.
No.
Did he have to give up a couple goats?
I don't think so. I just think he had to take her off his hands.
Just get out of here. Get out of here.
No, but I mean, all jokes aside, like, yeah, he, they married my grandmother to him because he had that same like entrepreneurial spirit, and like that, he had built his own, way in this world. Yeah. The crazy thing was, as in everything in life, it's like, you're up and shit always changes, right? My grandfather's land was taken away from him. So my family was displaced, and my mom was around 5 or 6 years old. And they had to, like, she has memories of her, like, having to run out of her house with her mom carrying her baby sister, and all of them in the middle of the night. Because they're taking.
I'm literally like
because they're taking. I mean, and if anyone knows like the history of Colombia, there was a guerrilla.
Yeah.
And this is at the time that they were forming, and so that's when a lot of this stuff happened. So that's when they went to Medellin and they moved into the city. My grandfather became a salesman. And so he would travel the country selling whatever, selling insurance, but it was always this thing of, we build our own way. When my mom was little, and obviously they were in the city, everyone kind of had to pitch in, whether you were a child or not. So my mom started making soaps when she was little, and her brothers would go and sell the soaps. Wow. And then she would send them to collect the money. And this is like her at like 8, 9, 10.
That's wild.
Then she started like, she learned how to sew, and she started sewing like baby clothes. And then she went to work for a seamstress, and eventually she started doing her own thing. Then, she went and opened up like this little jewelry un taller. Like a
little
shop.
store.
Yeah, like a little shop,
Storefront.
and they would make jewelry.
Wow.
And then she opened up a printing business in her 20s, and she, started getting like little contracts with like different offices and schools.
Like
so
making
she was a
flyers,
station,
that kind of stuff?
flyers, calendars, business
Amazing.
cards,
Yeah.
letterheads, and she had all the machinery, which is actually the machinery that I used to play with when I was a kid and I lived with my grandparents, because they had it in the garage. And my grandfather would tell me these stories of my mom, how like entrepreneurial she was, and she was so berraca. And that's like it's like part of the culture in Colombia. It's like women are berracas. Like you go out into this world and you fucking make shit happen. Like that's it.
Head first, you take it on like head first.
Yeah. And that's what I grew up around, and just, seeing, and then obviously like being here and seeing my mom like raise my sisters and I by herself. She had a restaurant, she had a bakery, but then she was also like at one point selling real estate. At another point, she, opened up a cleaning company.
Wow.
She sold furniture. Like my mom has done everything. And so just like seeing that, where it's like, there is no fear. Like if you have to do something, you go out and do it. Like
1,000,000%.
Yeah. And then I was always told, you have education, you have a language, like you have no excuses.
You have no excuses. That's
just the ones you tell yourself.
Exactly.
It's true.
Joe, I mean, just hearing from Angela this entire time, like she has this entrepreneurial spirit in her blood. What, I mean, from your background, made you comfortable of like, aside from that conversation when you were working in the bank, like what made you feel confident enough to say, you know what, I'm gonna take this leap? Were you ever inspired by anything like within your like upbringing?
I would say no. But I think that the biggest piece was never wanting to be down. So I would say I mean, coming from the Bronx, if you know, in the 80s especially, coming from the bottom, not wanting to stay there was like one of the biggest inspirations. Was like, we seen like when they say the Bronx is burning, like we were in that. Like I was the kid jumping on mattresses and doing all those things, and it was like a billion empty lots, and I just knew that wasn't like me. Even walking down the blocks in like the 80s and 90s, I knew that wasn't the person that I was put here to be. So it was always that, like, I know I can do totally better than my surroundings. So,
and I think like community too, like, Angela kind of having this background, like, again, feeling comfortable to take a leap when you got like a good support system around you. I'm sure that the same could be said for you with Joe. Like, we underestimate a lot, like how much we can do when like we got people that like are behind us. And can,
well,
like,
that's the way we can do
us.
Things, is having people behind us
and allowing it too, because I think that's a harder part. Like giving. I think it's funny. I just been recently flirting with this idea, like giving love and shit like that is really easy compared to like being able and open to receiving, like just
it's hard to receive love if you haven't been conditioned that way.
Yep.
It's very, I feel like that's been a common thread within a lot of our conversations is about like being comfortable enough with A, receiving love, and then B, loving yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like,
it's the start of everything.
It's very easy for you to, and like we've had this conversation in the past too, where it's like, it's very easy for you to negative talk yourself or talk yourself out of certain things. But like if you switch that mind state up, which is a very hard thing to do, it's not easy.
Nope.
Because you got the scouting report on yourself, right? So like you know everything about.
It's like it's like I know everything about
I know all
myself.
the deficiencies, bro.
Yeah. But the power of the community is really that support system. Like number one, you both supporting one another, because if he hadn't come home with that conversation that he had at the bank, it wouldn't have triggered you to be like, damn,
Let's
what?
do this.
We can do this,
Yeah.
So that's a huge leap.
Yeah.
We always like to ask, like, who's the smartest person that you know, and like hearing the way you talked about your mom and like kind of her trajectory and her resourcefulness, which again is a big word for us. Like, who would y'all say is like that smartest person, right? Like, you say it, Angela.
No.
Oh, okay. You first.
Thank you.
Yo,
Thank you,
Joe
Joe.
be racking up the points.
I was like,
I'm handing
damn.
it over to her.
You're supposed to be like, yes,
I threw
Joe.
it up, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from that,
All you had to do was like,
that's too easy though. That's way too easy. And I tell her this all the time. Like, she's brilliant. But yeah,
I'll say, to me, it's my kids.
Amazing.
I think kids, when you have kids, they come here, they choose you, and they come here to teach you, and you got to be open to receiving the lessons. And becoming a mother and being in the quest to be a mother to them, I've gone deep in learning about myself, like unlocking certain parts of myself and looking at certain parts of myself that I would have never done before. And most of that is because I watch them and because I see like what they need. Even just watching like their curiosity and their creativity and how they just like see the world, view the world, and how they want to approach things. I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. I never saw it that way. And to me, it's like kids are the most intelligent and the most pure because they haven't been tainted by anything.
Yep.
And
No
that's what we need to
filters.
be watching.
They just like what comes to them. There's no, like, I look at it like a conveyor belt of sorts. Like the more you experience life, the longer that conveyor belt gets, like as a factory.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a thought and you spit it out, right? And it goes through this, like it goes through all the things that you've been told through your life. Like, oh no, you can't think this, or you can't do this. When you're a kid, you have none of that shit is uploaded
At
into
all.
it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you look silly, like, or some like comment that comes through from, but it's like a genuine, from the heart kind of comment.
Yeah.
And I think that again, that usually leads you to reveal like some very honest things that you
Right.
probably won't get from some,
Yeah.
some other person.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
What was, given that your kids are the smartest people that you know, what was the biggest lesson that you've learned about A, yourself, and B, just about life in general through them?
All the answers are within me. I think my whole life I've been waiting to be seen by someone outside of me and waiting to be recognized by someone else. And especially like working in corporate America,
Yes.
you work so hard and you do all these things to be recognized and get the promotion and the big job and all these things. And with them, I've learned, and just again going inside so that I can know myself better, to be a better mom to them. It's like, oh shit, it's all inside of me. It's that simple. It's all inside of me. And if I just reconnect with myself, like I know what I want to do. I know what I feel.
Yeah.
And it's like the only thing preventing that is what I think the outside is going to think.
It's a hard, and that's one of the hills, man. That's one of the
is.
hardest hills to get over, is trying to get past what other people are gonna think. And so right before we started the show, we were having this conversation with Joe, and Joe is one of those people that he don't give a damn what people think.
Give a fuck.
He don't give a damn. But Joe, just going back to Jeff's question, like, who would you consider to be the smartest person that you know or you know?
I would have to.
He's sticking with the answer. That was actually a trick question. I wanted to see if he was going to go back to Angela. But okay, cool. It's Angela. Why?
I'll tell you, she's brilliant. Like I get a lot of my. I think I'm a fairly confident person, but I feel like she takes my confidence to the next level, so to speak. So for instance, if I bring an idea to Angela, I could run 1,000 miles per hour if I get Angela's buy-in. So I'm like, hey, I pitch a deal to her. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? If I get her buy-in, I can fly.
Yeah.
If she's not on board, I'm like, fuck, back to the drawing board type of deal. She's not in. So she's just like that person that I like go to when I'm like thinking something like, yo, what do you think? And if she's like, yo, that's dope, then I'm like, let's go.
How have you guys been able to find that balance, right? because it's not easy. Number one, it's not easy to have a business partner
I was
just in
gonna
general.
start there.
So having a business partner and also that person be your wife, your husband, where like you can't necessarily escape them. Something goes awry professionally, whether it's like you're not having a good day professionally, like can you separate that when you are back home? Or it's like there's
Well,
the
clearly
lines
we
are so
have,
blurred.
because we've gone through maybe like 5 different real estate deals, 3 businesses. So we've done a lot. So clearly you can. And I think part of it is knowing your role and like not taking like any of it, I won't say not that serious, but like we're together, like we're this unit, and then there's this stuff, and not getting away from that. So
We're doing this together.
She's doing this together. Like, fine, we don't get along all the time. That's cool. She might bring things up, and I'm like, eh. And she's like, why don't you feel my ideas? And same, vice versa, right? So understanding that it's bigger than all the ideas we have.
Yeah.
Us being together and raising this beautiful family. So, yeah.
I would say also there is no balance. It's the things you choose to focus on at certain moments and how you choose to focus on them. I think there's always like that question of like, what's the balance? But it truly isn't a balance. It's like you have to choose how you want to move in one particular way,
Right.
and when you can move in that direction. And I think I'm going to go back to like working on yourself, because the only way it works is when you actually you're open to feedback, you're open to growing, you're open to continuous improvement. And the only way that relationships, partnerships, and any of it work is when you're committed to continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like you're just both going to be stuck. And I'm a Taurus, so like I will be stuck in my ways forever and ever. If I want to dig my heels into something, I'll be like, nope. But you have to be open to really wanting to improve and hearing the other person and seeing other perspectives.
That's a really awesome tidbit, right?
Yeah.
So like you started to kind of hit on it. What I'm very interested to know, and I know a lot of couples that are watching, that are listening right now, they're interested to figure out like how can they create this dynamic, right, within their relationship. Not all the time are you going to have 2 individuals who are entrepreneurial individuals and both creative. So there's usually like an imbalance there. There might be one who's like super into this stuff and another one who's a little bit more, cool, whatever, I'll support. What is your process? When and Joe, you kind of mentioned it, like if I throw a proposal at her or I pitch her an idea, what is the process that you guys have developed over the years to be able to get to that?
And are there ground rules? Like,
That's a great one.
Can't talk about business during like breakfast or some shit.
I've tried to do that, and we always end up talking about business, about ideas and what it's if I think about our relationship, and like I mentioned before, it's like we started talking about wanting to open up a business before we even talked about, do you want to have kids? Do you want to get married? Are we going to get engaged?
That's awesome. Yeah.
It was, it was just one of the things, I don't know, it just kind of blossomed between us. And maybe it was that, being from the Bronx and like wanting to, I got to do something different. I got to do something better. And me having like my family and sort of like those entrepreneurial like inklings, that it was like, we can do some. And we're from New York. I mean, if you think about New York, this is the place like where everyone dreams of being, to come and do something. And then they come here and they do something. And it's like,
so
if we're from here, how can we not do something?
I
keep
bring
seeing
this
people
up.
coming in.
Dude, I have this conversation all the time, right? And I'm constantly in awe of the not the first generation, but the immigrant population that comes to New York, right? So growing up here in the Heights or growing up in the Bronx my entire life, you see living around Dominicans all the time. I've always noticed, Dominicans, like no matter where they are, they will start a business and they will get going. They don't need no blueprint. They just go and figure it out. Yeah. And I've always been in awe of that. Now, being first generation here in the US, I've always looked at businesses and, like you were kind of saying before, I've had this fear of like, yo, starting a business is a big deal. You know, like,
because
like,
we got educated.
Right. It's the whole idea of like retraining and uneducating yourself in a way.
This is the only way our families were able to get in, was to start their own business. Who was going to hire our parents?
And it's like they just went off and just did what they had to do. They started their own business, no blueprint. And then yet we are over here overthinking, over strategizing, and like, okay, this isn't gonna work because of X, Y, Z.
Trying to come up with all the answers. And the key is you're never gonna have all the answers. Never.
Nobody ever does. We know that.
That's a massive hump that I had to get over too. Even with this project, like I wanted to have all this shit, like, and Oscar's my primary witness. I wanted to have all this shit like, yo, spotless, like no flaws, like aesthetically, nothing. And then I was like, yo, hold on. Fucking 3 years have passed by, and like, let's just fucking talk to people. Right. Let's just start talking to people. And I think that it has to do with the programming a little bit. And you kind of hit it when you talked about your mom's background and your grandfather and stuff. I think the programming here is a little different because, like, we see, and also depends on what you grew up around, like, or what significant moments in the country you grew up around too. Like, I was getting out of high school when the crash happened, like the 2008 shit, and I was like, holy shit, like, this is the world that I'm coming into. 07, right? Like that was like the start of it all.
You were going into college.
Yeah, like, but no, like, you know, but like, but
I just graduated college.
It's a different, like I was going into college, but like I was leaving like the normal, everybody's like providing for me at this point, right? Like now I'm on my own, and it's like, oh, by the way, the stock market is broken. And it's like, oh shit, all right, what am I like?
Michael Jackson died, the stock market, it was that.
What I got to look forward to.
Yo, those are the two things that I remember about 2009.
Take my eyes, not MJ.
Michael died, the stock market crashed.
It was crazy.
No jobs.
But yeah, I think like there's a certain built-in apprehension that comes about with that stuff, right? Because you like are seeing what's going on in your surroundings, and like for now at some point it becomes your responsibility to whether or not you want to let it like impact you like significantly to the point that you don't do it at all, right? But I do think that there's like an American programming too, like that people who come from other countries, they're like, fuck it, man, like this is the opportunity, like this is the time for the opportunity. Like I didn't have any of these opportunities elsewhere. I'm gonna just make the most of it right now. Whereas Americans, I don't think we're raised like that, because just like I feel like there's a lot more like, and I see it with my parents, like they think that everything is convenient here. They're like, oh my god, you guys.
I mean, compared to
exactly
a third world country,
they live like oh my god, you fucking do this and you do this, and it's like I see it now. I see why it's so easy for you to just hustle and like go through this stuff. Where it's like for us, we got to have 1,000,001 questions answered before we even take the first step or something like that.
It's when you said that, Joe and Jeff, the line that came into my head, that's been in my head forever, is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
And it's true, you know, like when Jeff was talking about the podcast, like I think we were trying to overly perfect the preparation of doing this before we even did it.
Yeah.
And so that causes blocks, that causes moments of like uncertainty of whether or not you want to keep going, you know what I'm saying? But you cannot let like that idea of this perfect idea in your head be the enemy of something that's just good. Yeah. You know, like our whole thing, and the reason why we wanted to do this with Just also is just to create. Just the process of creating and putting something out into the world that can either be a benefit to somebody or a resource to somebody, that was the most intriguing thing to us. You know, and like just the opportunity, like, look, I'm not a painter, I'm not a designer, but I have a voice, and if I can use that as my tool to be able to create and have people feel, then I'm gonna do it. Right. You know?
It's like our North Star. Like we hear me say it a million times, you don't have to be a Goldman banker or a programmer at Google. Like I think as long as you find whatever that is, like and go hard, like I think it'll start mapping itself out for you. But it's like the fucking Billie Jean video. You gotta take the step and the shit lights up and all that. You know, like you have to take the step first. Like, and I don't know. I think that leads me to like another question for y'all is in terms of Milk and Pull. Like, do you think that specifically was the smartest decision that you ever made? Like deciding that, all right, we're gonna do this, or was it like deciding that you were like entrepreneurs in the first place?
I think the smartest decision that we made was investing in real estate, because that gave us the start
launch
to be able to do all the other things we have done.
I would say yes, that and not giving up.
Yeah.
Because when we signed our first lease for the first location, we also found out that she was pregnant. So same year. Yeah. So of course we could have said, man, this is first time parents, this is crazy. Yeah. What are we doing? We can't open a business and have a baby, but we buckled down, was like, oh, we're gonna do this, like being crazy, like we're gonna do it. She was pregnant and we was like, let's go.
I had someone in my family say, when I told them I was pregnant, they were like, oh, that's great. Babies bring blessings. This is perfect that you signed this lease and you're having a baby. It's meant to be.
That's definitely glass half full.
So she was mourning sickness in the shop, trying to help design our first location. Like craziness everywhere going on. We both had full-time jobs,
I was just
babies, trying to open a business. And it was like no one could have like said, this is how everything is going to play out.
Yeah.
And it was like, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah. And that's
all the more inspiring.
I want you guys to get into that journey a little bit, right? That journey from shop 1 to shop 3 at this point, and the process of leasing, owning. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a very, very interesting journey there within itself. And also, Joe, you just mentioned it. When you guys signed that lease, you were both still working full-time jobs.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think we worked full-time jobs. Joe stopped working 2016, no, 17. So 4 years into our business.
Wow.
And 16.
16, 3 years into the business. And I stayed on until, probably a couple of months ago. So this whole time I've been working, but that was a conscious decision. The reason that we did that, when he said like, I think I want to focus on this full time, I was like, go ahead, do it.
That was kind of the plan. But when I came,
that was a proposal that you brought to her?
No, that was the plan already. We already knew that eventually it was time for me to get out. We had conversations with, like you said, the work stuff always ends up in our conversation. And then it was like one day, and I was just like, I'm kind of like over it. And she was like, what's the difference between now? Because we had just bought a new house, and she was like, what's the difference between now and say May? And I was like, oh shit, nothing. It ain't gonna hurt us any. So then it was like, okay, done. She gave me the green, again, going back, she gave me the green light. I bought something to her. She gave me the green light, and I was like, oh yeah. The bells went off, and it was like, all right, I'm done.
And I think it's been like very conscious in that too, of me always working in order to be able to, all of our home stuff is covered, So every decision that we've ever made for the business has been with the business in mind versus like, we're making a decision because we need to survive. Like our
the business never paid for
our life.
Our life. The business
that's what I worked for.
It definitely helps your decision making. Like you don't have to make decisions out of
desperation.
Right. And then we were able to invest back into the business. And so it also made, so when we talk about the real estate, it's what made the real estate possible too, because it's like, me working and having the income that I had helped be able to get, the loans that we needed to get. We made a really good investment with what we bought in Bushwick, and then we sold it and we were able to buy something else with the proceeds of that. And then during this process, I also realized that I love interior design. And so, we bought properties that we fixed up that, I just became like obsessed with design and renovations. And fixed those up, sold that. And so it's almost like it's become these like two different businesses in a way that we've been doing.
I think it's fast. I think the most fascinating thing, like sitting down with y'all and having this conversation, is like the amount of belief that y'all have in each other. Like I think that is monumental, because I think like it's monumental to everything that you've accomplished. Like, without it, and it's assumed, but almost like it's hard to see that in effect in this specific way. Like I think, yeah, people love and support one another, but once you bring money into a situation, like that stuff starts getting a little different. So like I think just surmounting all that and like just having this continued support and like continued kind of like North Star or larger picture, I think is super inspirational. And anybody could really take away from that, because it's teamwork. Like that's a true definition of teamwork. And I just want to kudos to y'all.
Thank you.
We always like to give kudos during.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool. And with that, I think that there comes a lot of wisdom too, and understanding from both of you. So is there something that you guys would like to impart on like anybody who's watching this? We call it brain food. Oscar calls it brain food, but pretty much like a good piece of advice that anybody could really take away if they really want to like accomplish and realize their own thing.
I mean, honestly, I think advice is like one of those things that's like very personal to you, right? I've gotten tons of advice over the years, and sometimes it applies, sometimes it doesn't, and people always impart it with this, like, oh, you can, take this on. I think if I were to tell someone something, it's like you already know what you want to do. And the only thing stopping you is that voice inside and that fear that you have. But you already know. And the moment you sit down quietly with yourself, that's like what's knocking. It's like, you want to do this. And, it's that moment of when you want to sit down and actually listen and then move with it.
I see, every time I sit down and I try to do that, I just have a lot of voices in my head just saying a bunch of
you
different
just got to
things.
keep sitting until the other ones start quieting down, and then you listen to that one that matters.
See?
When
that happens, I turn Netflix on. It just derails everything completely.
He's like, what? Inner monologue? No. No.
But you know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all do. Can I share one thing that I actually heard recently? It was on one of my Peloton rides. I get a lot of wisdom. But on the ride, they were sharing how they had this moment with, I guess they brought Redman in to talk to them at one of their company events.
Redman?
Yeah.
Out of all people,
yes.
Redman.
Everyone says that.
Yes. And he said, and this is the thing that I was like, fuck, I got to get off this bike and write this down. Like this is... But the gist of it was everyone's always searching for that goal, that end thing. And it's like, until I get there, once I get there, I will be happy, right? Or this will unlock for me. But there's not an end goal. Yep. There's not that end journey. It's a whole bunch of nows and heres. It's the here and right now. It's a whole bunch of that.
Yeah. It's like trying to catch the horizon. It's like once you get to where you thought it was, like all you see is just more fucking horizon.
Right.
Like,
and it's like it's all the heres, and if we focus on the heres, that's the journey, that's the life. Like that's where you have to find your happiness in, whether it's like something amazing happening to you that you think it's amazing, or even the parts that you don't feel are as amazing, and they might feel a little shitty, but it's like, okay, there's something here for me to get from this. And so I'm going to be here and I'm going to focus on that, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, but that's okay, because just like the waves in the ocean, and I tell this to my daughter and my son all the time, it's like it all passes and it's all coming in and out, and that's what we just have to focus on.
It's true, right? So like when you're so focused on that end goal, that whatever, if it exists, it doesn't exist, a lot of times when you get there, you are so caught up in the next thing that you don't even have time to really sit and celebrate that moment of that accomplishment, that milestone that you hit.
And then you just missed the whole thing.
And you just missed it.
The whole thing, because you missed all the heres and nows in between that, and you got to whatever you thought that goal was, and now you're like chasing the next thing, and then you're never going to be content.
There was a moment. So, my wife and I, we bought our house 2 years ago at this point, and I had that moment. Like jumping into buying a house. That's a huge life, right? Like that's huge.
Yeah.
I never in my life, and Angela knows this very, very well, I never wanted to live in a house. I grew up in an apartment my entire life, grew up on 163rd, grew up over here in Riverdale, always in an apartment. And it was always just me and my mother. So I never needed more than what we had, ever. And I just never understood like why people have these huge houses that like you can't even keep warm. You know what I'm saying? So made the jump during COVID to say, you know what? Let me go to the bank and figure this out and see if I could make something happen. Made something happen. Cool. Got the house. So focused on like, all right, cool. Let's do renovations and all of this, and then jump back into work. And then I never had that like moment, and it was COVID, so we never had like the housewarming or any of that. So there was never those moments, right? And so I remember during our first summer at the house, we decided to eat outside in the backyard. And I said to my wife and my daughter, at the time she was 5 or 4 going on 5, and I said, I want us to stop before we start eating or whatever, like, and just realize that this moment right now, and it's like a bittersweet kind of thing that I said. I was like, this is probably one of the best moments that we're gonna look back and realize that this is one of the best moments that we've ever had. It's literally just us sitting in the backyard, in our backyard having dinner. And that to me, like when I think of that celebratory moment, that was it. That was my celebratory moment.
But there's an irony to what you're saying, because by doing that, you're practicing what Angela is just saying. Like you were so present that you were able to like take it in at that moment.
Self-realization
for what it is. Like I think those moments become a lot more like, I don't know, like as the little innocuous things that happen in your life are like the really impactful ones, because they're part of like the present. Like by the time you get to the journey or the end of the journey, like you've imagined the whole meal, and when you get there, there's only like one fucking app with a toothpick in it, and it's like,
I love your analogy, all of them. This is number 2.
Because the plates are always small. The plating is always tiny.
I only speak in analogies. But yeah, I don't know. That was really beautiful what you said. You said it was bittersweet, but I think it's beautiful because I just think
and I say bittersweet because the reality is this: we're young. There's so much more life, right? There's so many more things that have yet to happen.
Yeah.
But from at that moment, I knew that like, yo, this is one of the best moments. And like it was like I created a core memory for myself just from that moment.
And for your daughter.
And for her. And whether or not she's gonna remember it or not, like that's gonna be a core memory right there.
That's what I thought when you were saying that. That's what I thought. I was like, oh, you just like, that becomes a checkpoint in y'all's lives right there. Boom. And you can just refer back to that at any point. It's like, yo, remember when we got the house? Remember when we got the... So especially when you move out the house.
Yeah.
Like, oh, damn, Fresh Prince in the middle of the living room.
I think about that a lot with you guys because you've already gone through 3 different homes. And it's like, I don't know, like I get attached, right? Like I get attached to like the memories and the experiences that I have gone through in this place. And to like think like, all right, gotta pack up, move to the next spot.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's exciting because you're creating all of these, you're about to create some new memories, you know? But like leaving that part behind, like that's gotta be tough and then exciting at the same time, you know? There wasn't a question there. It was just kind of like...
I'm trying to think.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I moved around quite a bit when I was little. So I never
got tied to like a certain place and felt like...
Well, I was there. I loved it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now we got to go.
Yeah.
And now you go to the next thing. And that's life. Like it's, you appreciate it for the moment that it's there, and then you gotta move on to the next thing.
That was a jewel that you just dropped right now. Jeez. I don't think you realize how big that was just now, because it's true. Like, yo, appreciate that moment, because that's what it's there for.
It was good for that season.
It was good for that, and it's fine if it's not after that.
I've had many like realizations like that. Like sometimes you go back and you try to do something that you were doing, like even like a hobby or something like that. You go back and try to do it again, and it's like,
the same.
Nah, it don't feel the same. Like it's different now. I'm older. I'm like this, da da da. Or like even romantically, like you go to that old thing and it's like, oh, nah, you see kind of why like that.
Now I remember why I wasn't messing.
That was good. That was good. That was good for that season.
Well, so you ain't never supposed to go back to that. It's like,
yeah. Now we know that.
Thank you for echoing my.
Thank you for echoing my.
So so much has happened within your journey. 3 stores. What keeps you guys inspired?
Life. I mean, what is there not to be? We live in the greatest city in the world. It's like just walking outside, seeing people, like what they're doing, seeing the next generation come up. I think it's everything about life inspires me. When I walk into the shop and I'm meeting people and I'm talking to regular customers that come in and just hearing about their life, what they're doing, like what they're thinking about, I just, that all invigorates me and inspires me.
And the fact that you guys created like a space for people, like you know, you kind of hit on that right now, but like, coffee shops are like ideas are born there.
Yeah,
like
that's
love
exactly
is born
like
there,
why
heartbreak
we,
is born, like all sorts of shit.
All of it, man. We've seen in the 10 years. You're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, but June 24th.
Yeah.
Of this year.
Oh, congrats!
Wow.
So we've seen it all. We've had people get engaged at the shops. We've had people come into our shops and meet with their designers of their first homes, and kind of like plan out what their first home is going to look like. So,
or coming in,
meeting
just
nannies.
having moved in the neighborhood, and then it's like, a couple of years later, they're pregnant and they're coming in, and then you see the baby.
Yeah.
And so, like, seeing all these,
it's amazing, because that is a true community hub, right? Like you know all your customers. I mean, do you even refer to them as customers? Because you guys probably have deep relationships with so many. You've seen so much progression in all of their lives, depending on where you are.
Yeah, I mean, we've made friends from the shops, just meeting, as customers and then becoming friends. I'm just grateful for all of the lives that I'm able to like witness, and all of the small interactions that I'm able to witness that come in, and I just get to like glimpse a little bit of like their lives or their work or what they're doing. It's amazing, and I'm just grateful that like they even think about our space to come in and work on something, or meet with someone, or just be like, oh, this is a place I come to and read my book and relax. There's like people I walk in the morning and they're there journaling, and I'm just like, this is where you chose to come. Like, thank you.
Yeah. And you're facilitating that breakthrough, whatever that breakthrough is.
mean,
Y'all are like the facilitators. I love that.
I'm going to use an analogy right now. Your customers fill your cup.
Wow.
They do.
You do.
They do all the time. All the time.
I hope you got that. That was good. I just came up with that right as she was talking.
Whereas my son will say, that filled my bucket.
We're using that one.
They're all my bucket fillers. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, tell us a little bit more about the design aspect, because this is a very big part of your life and your identity. You guys have been recognized for it, not only for your shops, but also for your home. How did you get into that, number one? And number two, like, how are you like constantly coming up with creative ideas to differentiate your shop from all the other third wave kind of coffee shops that are out there?
I think when it comes to design, I've always been interested in just spaces and things. Like, there's like little things that I love. Like, it's the color of, like, I always remember like the color of my grandmother's like terracotta tiles in her patio in Colombia. And, or like the weird, tile formations that they had there. It's like all these little things that I've always gravitated to. And like, even you mentioned it before, I've never thought of myself as a creative in the like I don't draw, I don't sing, I don't, do any of those things. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to having a vision, whether it's for myself or someone else, and then like seeing what it can be, and then how things can come together, like that's what I follow, and that's what I love to do. And that's how the spaces have come together. It's just the things that I love, that I gravitate to, that make me feel at ease and comfortable. And so that's, when it comes to the design aspect of it, it's like, what is it that I love? Like, what am I interested by? What am I inspired by? And I don't try to follow anybody else or anything else really. It's just if I'm moved by something, then that's what I'm moved by. But I've always, like, even when I was in college, like at one point I thought, all right, I'm gonna transfer and I'm gonna go to FIT, and I'll major in design. And then all the grown-ups around me were like, if you major in design, then you can only get a job in design. And then I was like, okay, I'll stay at Baruch and, I'll stay in my business track. And obviously they said that to like kind of help me, in their own way. But I've always had that inkling of wanting to create and put things together. I just like, I love putting things together.
Joe, how much do you help or do you participate in the design process?
He'll tell me stuff is too expensive. It'll be like, not gonna work.
Is that really what it is? Like
I'm not. Design is not my thing. I might have like input on like small things, like, hey, I think we should go like a full glass door, no transom or something like that. But for the most part, I think I'm confident enough in like leaning on her, like to do her thing, and being like happy with the outcome. Yeah. And she can see beauty in things that I may not see. So she like from the house, like incorporating like old with new, and the same thing at the current shop is like having a vision of like, oh, I see the beauty in this. Just let me run with it. And I'm like, cool, you got it. But yeah, I'm not designed for it.
But you're telling her like, hey, the material cost for this is, find an alternative. This is a little too expensive.
Yeah, I always put it out there, but sometimes she listens, other times she don't. And she'll try to sell me on like, I'm telling you, this is gonna be a hit. This is gonna be it.
Then I bring my account management and advertising skills.
But and then
we had to present to clients, and I'm like, and this is why you want this idea.
6-page deck.
Yes, exactly.
Going back on my the second half of my long-winded question to you, differentiation. How have you guys been able to differentiate your shop, compared to all of the other like shops that are coffee shops that are popping up? Like, how do you feel? What makes Milk and Pool different?
Us, I think we're running our own race and our own marathon and our own thing. We've never tried to do what, anyone else is doing. I mean, you can't live life that way either, even in your own personal life, like trying to follow what other people are doing. Like
Keeping
it's never going to, it's not going to be authentic to you. And so for us, it's like our presence, like being there, making sure that we're meeting people, that we're designing the spaces to where they're made for comfort and for people to want to stay in, because we would want to stay in there. Yeah. And so it's a lot of it. It's like listening to us as a consumer first and foremost, because that's why like us visiting so many places, it's like we are consumers. And I think a lot of times people forget, whether you're in corporate and you're marketing to someone else, you forget yourself, or even as a business owner, like you forget yourself as the consumer. Yeah. And we all consume. Yeah. So it's like you gotta, again, listen to that voice, and then listen to people too. I think we talk to so many people, and because we are in the communities that we opened in, We've lived there. So we just have that connection.
Definitely, I think the aspect of design too lends to the previous conversation about like community. I think you kind of touched on it, like creating a space that people want to like feel comfortable doing all these things in is also a big part of it too. And like, I think people underestimate how much like designing spaces plays into like just pretty much mood and like intent,
The
that kind of
experience
stuff.
is everything.
Yeah. And I think that's just fascinating because it has like everything kind of speaks to each other in like in your business format, if you will. And I think that's really cool. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I know we're coming up close on time. We're not going to put that in there. But what I did want to ask you guys, we've spoke about a lot of the great, awesome, positive things. What about the hurdles? Because I know it hasn't been rainbows and sunshines for the past 13 years. I'm just talking about in terms of the business, in terms of everything. What have been some of the hurdles that you guys have faced?
I mean, there's a ton of hurdles, but I don't think we sit and dwell on like, oh, this is so hard. How are we going to do this? It's like, this is happening right now. Like, what is the best thing we can do right now? I think everything that we approach, no matter what we're going through, especially in the not so, amazing moments, it's the learning. Like, what am I getting from this? Like, what is this saying that I need to learn from? It's always looking for the lesson in things. It's what's gotten us through all of the hard moments. Listening. A lot of it is also listening to people and trying to understand. And then the biggest thing too is like just knowing, again, like staying true to like who we are and what we're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, it's like everything that we're doing and that we're trying to do, it's all coming from a place of love. And like, we love what we do. We love what we've created. We love being part of the communities that we're in, the people whose lives we're a part of, whether, they're employees or whether they're customers or whether they're just people that surround our community. Like, we're grateful and we love being a part of all those aspects of lives. And so I think that gratefulness is what carries us through. But I don't look at it so much as like, oh, these are the negatives that are happening. It's like, okay, this is a moment that we have to learn from or that we have to move through.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, things always present themselves. But I think the partnership also helps, and like us sitting down and being that we're self-funded, it's just us. We're not going to anyone else. We don't have to like reach out to any investors like, hey, this is what's happening. What do you think we should do, or consult with anyone? It's like, okay, we can sit down and discuss like what's the best way to kind of like proceed. And I think that's been a lot easier for us to move forward than having to like consult with some investors or something like that.
Other perspectives.
Easier and harder, because there are times where it's like,
it would be easier if you had the capital, because sometimes capital is a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because we can do a bunch of things if we had outside like money. Like things would be the growth would be so much faster. But because we're self-funded, it's like, okay, I would love to do that, but like she'll present something, I'm like, oh, that would be amazing, but that's gonna cost like, and I'm like, I'm not sure if that's the best next move. You know what I mean? So
and having that additional backing of investors, that opens up a whole set of other problems.
Yeah.
Could potentially.
It could be a great thing that comes from it, but we've been riding this wave of just being self-funded, and it's been working. Could the growth be faster? 100%, but it comes with its own set of problems.
Yeah. And it puts you guys at like a very different tier, right? Like a Black and Brown owned business that is completely self-funded, like, and self-contained. That's special. I don't know the stats on that. We'll find out. We'll put it on the screen. But like, you guys have to be like, and even with any of the entrepreneurial friends that you guys have, like, I'm sure that's an interesting conversation to have. It's like, we've done this on our own.
Yeah. Just thinking like historically, it's like this, in a way, it's also like in our DNA. It's like no one was funding Black businesses. You know, if you look at the history, like we've always had to be self-funded. It's harder, and even now you see the statistics of like how hard it is how hard it is for Black and brown businesses to raise funds. So again, it's like it's just part of almost like, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. It wasn't so much like, you know, also I don't think we're taught how to go and ask for help and ask for money. Because asking for help and asking for money is a weakness in our 100%. Communities. And 100%. So that's, you know, I think that's also at a stage where we're coming at where it's like, it's not a negative to say like, hey, you know what, we are looking for investment, right? Like there's no downside of that. Which is very different from how we're brought up and how we're taught. We're taught to be self-sufficient.
And not all investment is good investment either. Just to put that out there, like knowing what you want up front and what you seek to gain from that investment is super important. Like just taking money in for the sake of taking money is not the best idea, I don't think.
Especially when you have like such a kind of established vision, right? And like having this other perspective come in, it's like, well, you don't even know half the shit that we've built already.
So figuring out what they're doing to help the situation.
It's insane. It's insane. And also to Oscar's point, this is probably like, this takes up, if there's an hour conversation between entrepreneurs, that's like 25 minutes of the conversation. It's just like investing and funding and all this stuff and like how that happens. And you know, you don't have to do any of that.
So you guys are coming up on your 10-year anniversary this month. What's next for Milk and Pull? And also, what's next for the Austins?
Oh man,
it's a lot, man. It's a big question. We're still coming down. I mean, this new location, we're still coming down from that high. That was the biggest project yet. With the third location, relocating, well, acquiring the property. So acquiring property and then opening the new shop last year. It's like probably our biggest project yet.
And stay on that, right? So why was this location so big and so different from the previous ones?
What do you mean?
Well, you guys kind of alluded to it before.
You
guys were leasing the spaces before.
Right.
Yeah, and for us, the seeing what's obviously happened to all of really like the third wave coffee shops that came before us, where it's like, I mean, look at everything that was in Williamsburg on Bedford Avenue, you know, early 2000s, mid 2000s, even like 2010, that's not there now. And for us, ownership has always been really important. And it's been core also to like where we've wanted to go as a business. And so when we had the opportunity to, you know, find a space in a community that we are in, that we live in, that we're raising our kids in, that's our home. It just felt like this is, you know, I love Bed-Stuy and I want to see it be what it was before. Like when I think about Malcolm X, where we're at, it was all businesses. Like people did not have to leave the neighborhood to get what they needed. And my vision would be for that to come back, to have, you know, everything you need. Everything you need in that community to be available to you within walking distance.
That's fascinating.
I want it to be a part of that long term.
It's going to pay back dividends in the future.
And it's the goal in mind, right? Which is like, again, you know, we see so much money leave our communities based on like these companies that come in and don't do anything for the communities that they reside in. And like you guys, not only do you have business there, you live in these communities too. So I think that's like, I think the difference. Like, yeah, you bought this building, but it's like, watch what we're about to do.
You're reinvesting back into the community.
And look who we're about to inspire too. Like, I think that's another aspect of it too, because all it takes is one. And then you start kind of seeing this like, or kind of new air to be like, yo, you know what? Like, this is so dope. I want to do this,
Right.
you know? And I think that's a big deal too.
Thank you guys for coming all the way uptown.
Yeah,
Thank you guys
thank
for
you
coming
for
uptown
having us.
and having this conversation with us and imparting a lot of this experience and knowledge, your journey with our listeners and viewers and all of that.
Yeah.
Can you let the world know where they can follow Milk and Pull?
Yes, you can follow us on Instagram at Milk and Pull. And then also visit us in Ridgewood, Queens and in Bed-Stuy.
Awesome.
All the locations are right here at the bottom of the screen.
They're here. You'll see them.
That's movie magic, Joe. That's movie magic. You see that? That right there?
Harold's like, yo, stop pointing there. I can't put it there.
You don't need to do that. Guys, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Shout out to the Austins. They are the smartest people in the room. And hopefully we get to talk to you guys again soon.
Word.
And we will be by the shop. I got to experience it. I got to take Jeff over there.
Yeah, that was the next thing. I'm so down.
Yeah.
I'm so down.
It's definitely a spot that you'll be in awe of. Number one, definitely the design. The coffee's fantastic.
I have a lot of writing to do, so you know.
Oh, come
Yeah.
by.
We gotta
Come
we gotta
by.
make it
Change
happen.
your setting.
Yeah.
Go out there. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We're the smartest guys in the room. I'm O.
I'm Jeff. Follow us at The Smartest Pod on IG and TikTok. Love y'all. See y'all next week. Peace.